Hi guys, welcome to Ceramics. My name is Miss Singleton,
Hey, good morning everybody. I'm Mr. Rosenast.
and today we will be talking about the ceramic process and the stages of clay.
All right, so we're gonna, as soon as she gets far enough away from me, I'm gonna take this off. So what we're gonna look at today is the different stages of clay. And clay comes in a lot of different stages, or it develops into a lot of different stages. And we've got basically 5 different stages that we're gonna be looking at. The first one's called plastic. The second is leather hard, and this all has to do with the kind of drying of the clay after you start working with it. Then we get a bone dry stages. Following that, once it gets to the bone dry, which I'll show you in a minute, we get to where we're gonna actually put the clay in the kiln, which is the big oven at about 1200 degrees or so. So it gets really, really hot. And then once it comes out, it's gonna be what we call bisqued. And all this stuff will be, you'll see all these things eventually so you can get the spellings down and all that. And then finally, after it's bisqued, you're gonna glaze it, which is kind of painting, and you'll see that as well. And then it'll go into the kiln one last time, and that's when it comes out and it's completely done. So to begin with, I'll show you what the plastic stage of clay looks like. And we're using a kind of clay, this is just a really simple gray clay. And this is just a ball. It's about, I don't know, half a pound or so. And it's very, you can see it's very pliable. It's very mushy, it's very soft. And this is where it comes straight out of the bag when you're working with it. This is what you're gonna be using to make any of your sculptures, if you're doing any slab work or anything like that. It's very, very soft. You can roll it up, you can mush it up. It's gonna make your hands messy. It's gonna get on your clothes. It's gonna get all over the place. But it's very, very easy to work with. And this is probably the most common way you've seen clay when you've seen it. If we look at it in terms of, Ms. Singleton was comparing it to chocolate, and she was saying that with the plastic clay, it's kind of like a Snickers bar on a hot day. It's really mushy and it's gonna get all over everything and it's gonna make a mess. But it's very soft and it's very pliable and it's very easy to work with. Now what you're gonna do with that, that's the stage of clay that you're gonna be, like I said, you're gonna be forming shapes with, you're gonna be making things out of it, you're gonna be decorating it in some ways, sometimes. And then once you've done that, you're gonna let it dry for a little while. And when you do let it dry for a while, it goes to what we would call leather hard. Now at this point, it's not as mushy as it was like this. You can't really roll this up. If you do, it'll start cracking because it's gotten a lot drier. It doesn't have as much water in it as this does. But with the leather hard, as opposed to the plastic clay, with this you can just really just cut right into it. It's very easy to work with. With the leather hard clay, it's not quite, it doesn't go in quite as easily, but you can still work with it. You can still make details with it. If you've made a shape with it that you like and then you want to add some detail, if you want to put some sort of inscriptions on it, or if you want to put some details to it that have to do with what we call incisions, or if you want to add to it, if you want to add, maybe you're making some kind of a character and you want to put some sort of features on it, like a face, or if you want to add arms or legs to it, things like that, you can still work with it. And that's the leather hard stage. And we call it leather hard because it really is kind of like, if you consider it like a leather jacket or a belt, it's kind of like the same consistency there. So that's the second stage. Then the third stage, and I'll show you these together, this is what we call bone dry, and this is where the clay has really become so dry that you can't do anything with it. And this is where you want your clay to be before it goes into the kiln for the first time. Now you can see the difference in the colors between the two. These are both the same clays. It's just that this is the leather hard clay, this is the bone dry clay. This is much lighter in color. It's a little lighter in weight as well because the water has dried out of it. It doesn't have the same moisture content that this has. So this is much stiffer. It breaks very easily. It hasn't been fired yet, so it's kind of like, well, let me see. Ms. Singleton compared this to a chocolate bar, I guess like a room temperature chocolate bar, and this would be more like a frozen chocolate bar. So it's really stiff, it's really brittle, and it'll break very easily. I'm not going to break it because, well, I'm going to need to use it again. So this is the bone dry, and that's going to go into the kiln. Now once it goes into the kiln, it's fired. It's not fried, and it's not baked. It's fired in the kiln, and the kiln is the big oven, which I hope at this point you've seen in another video. And so once it gets fired, it's going to be in the kiln for several hours at, like I said, about 1200 degrees, so it's very, very hot. Now when it comes out, it's going to be a completely different color. This clay goes from this color to this color after it's been fired. So all of the moisture is out of it, and there's been some chemical processes that went on along with the firing that have completely changed the structure of this. It's not really clay anymore in the way that you would look at it, the way that this is, or these other pieces are. So the bisque fired clay is going to look very white, and at this point you can't do anything with it except decorate it with a glaze. And a glaze is something like a paint, except that it is, rather than being paint, it's applied like paint, but it's actually a liquid glass. And if you, I can just show you what a little bit of glaze looks like. You'll be getting lots of these when you come into the classroom. They come in very many different colors. They're quite interesting in that when you apply the color to the bisque clay, it is one color when you put it on, and it's going to come out another color because there's another chemical process that goes on when the clay is in the oven, in the kiln. When the clay is in the kiln the second time around with the glaze on it, all kinds of things go on. So you might put on a glaze that's this sort of tannish color, and it could come out green, or it could come out purple, or something else. So there's a lot that goes on with that. Now, what you're going to do when you do get your bisqued piece, this shoe for instance, you would decide what colors you want it to be. You would use those colors to glaze your piece. You would basically paint the glaze on, and once you've got it done and it's dried, it'll go into the kiln a second time. You need to make sure that you put at least 3 coats of glaze on your bisqued piece because it needs a good coating, because like I said, it's liquid glass and sometimes it tends to run, and if you don't put a good thick coating on it, it might all pool up into one place and it won't give you a good even coverage. So you want to be able to do that. One little thing that I would certainly remind you of when we came back to class is that you would never put a glaze on the bottom of your piece when it goes into the kiln, because that liquid glass is going to melt when it goes into the kiln, and it'll stick to the shelf that it's on. You'll never see it again. You won't be able to get it back. So those are your 5 stages of clay and the idea of glazing the clay before it goes into the kiln for the second and final time. And I think next up, Ms. Singleton's going to pick up the next step and talk to you about starting to work with the clay.